In the latest Neverlose update, extrapolation was added. In this video, we'll break down what it is, why it's needed, how extrapolation works in practice, and why this feature inevitably has its limits. Enjoy! Let's start with the basics, with definitions, because this is exactly where a lot of players still get confused. There are concepts like backtrack, self-track, interpolation, and extrapolation. Backtrack is relatively straightforward. This feature lets you work with the enemy's past position and shoot at it, within reasonable limits, of course. Self-track, in turn, lets you shoot from a position where the local player used to be earlier. And finally, interpolation and extrapolation. These are the two terms players mix up the most. Interpolation is the creation of additional records between real ones. It's typically used for the visual side of things, to smooth out jitter and make movement look more fluid. Extrapolation is an attempt to predict a player's future position based on their previous movements. What does this give you in practice? The aimbot can shoot at a point where the enemy hasn't appeared yet for the client, but already makes sense for the server. Because of this, you get the feeling that you're shooting with noticeably lower ping, which means you get a tangible advantage. Let's look at a clear demonstration. Our ping is 60. We assume a camping position with extrapolation off. Now we turn extrapolation on in the exact same situation. The advantage is visible to the naked eye. First and foremost, the aimbot has to be able to predict the enemy's movement. If the enemy starts moving, you can try to figure out what speed they'll reach and where they'll end up a few ticks from now. Our cheat, both in CSGO and CS2, is constantly collecting snapshots, per-tick records of the player's state. These records are needed for backtrack, that is, for working with the model's past positions, but their usefulness doesn't end there. This same history can also be used for extrapolation. By analyzing these records, the cheat can figure out the enemy's current state, whether they're standing still, accelerating, jumping, or decelerating. But the cheat can't know for sure how long this state will last. That's exactly why patterns have to be built, a set of the most likely behavior variants. Next, you need to use these patterns to figure out not just what the player's doing right now, but what they'll most likely do in the next moment. And this is where the most important step begins. You can't get it wrong about how far into the future you're predicting. If you want to land your shots, extrapolation can't go beyond server reality. Otherwise, the shot will go to a place where the player isn't on the server yet. Simply put, you don't shoot into the furthest possible future, but into the position that already makes sense for the server. This is precisely why this mechanic creates the feeling of lower ping. The aimbot's shooting at the model that's closer to server reality. If your ping's low, even at high values, the cheat won't predict further than the position that already makes sense for the server. But at high ping, the number of ticks really does matter, because the possible prediction window becomes noticeably wider. Now, about the most likely misconception. It's a mistake to assume that extrapolation will always make the cheat hit. That's impossible by definition. You can't see the future. You can only predict it, and hope the prediction turns out to be correct. The enemy can deliberately break the prediction logic, randomize their movement, sharply change direction, or change anti-aim angles. The negative factor of randomness can't be fully eliminated, so it's important to remember that the more ticks the aimbot tries to predict, the higher the chance that external factors will interfere and ultimately lead to a miss. The idea of extrapolation itself looks fairly clear, but making such a feature genuinely accurate, that's significantly harder. There are several reasons why extrapolation wasn't added for a long time. First, no one wanted to interfere with the established meta too early. Second, this feature spawned too many side problems and edge cases. For example, what players usually call shooting at birdies, that is, into thin air. That said, it's important to understand that extrapolation is a natural step in the evolution of rage functionality. The industry was bound to arrive at this mechanic one way or another. More than that, it's not just an interesting feature, but a genuinely useful tool in practice. It's needed for higher quality autostop, for playing on high ping, for Zeus, and overall for pushing rage functionality closer to its maximum effective state. For high ping players, the game will become both easier and harder at the same time. Easier because they'll start playing as if their latency were noticeably lower. Harder because their opponents get the same tool. That said, this feature still won't bring full fairness. Low ping players can use extrapolation too, just over a smaller number of ticks. And the smaller the prediction window, the higher the resulting accuracy, which means low ping players will get more accurate extrapolation. The main takeaway from this video: extrapolation is a strong feature that gives a noticeable advantage in-game. Like any mechanic, it has its limits, but that doesn't make its practical value any smaller. Extrapolation noticeably changes the usual gameplay and makes the game against those who use it competently significantly harder. Thank you for watching. This has been the Neverlose team. Stay tuned for more insights in our upcoming videos.